All right, let's talk about AI. It has absolutely exploded into our classrooms, and let's be real, it's not going anywhere. But the one question that's on everyone's mind is a big one. Is it helping students learn how to think, or is it just, well, doing the thinking for them? Today, we're going to cut through all the noise and look at what the actual data says. So yeah, let's get into it.
First, just to get a sense of the scale we're talking about, think about this number. By the middle of 2025, ChatGPT was seeing 700 million active users every single week. That is nearly 10% of all adults on planet Earth. Seriously, the speed at which this technology has been adopted, especially in education, is something we have never seen before. This is way more than just a new gadget. It's a full-on global phenomenon. And that incredible scale brings us right to the heart of this whole debate. With so many students using AI, are we accidentally creating a generation of super sharp, hyper-efficient thinkers? Or are we encouraging them to just outsource the very skills that school is supposed to build in the first place? That's really the core question we need to unpack.
So, which is it? A powerful tool that helps us learn, or a cognitive crutch that makes us lazy? Well, it turns out the research says the answer isn't really about the AI itself. Nope. It's all about how we decide to use it. It can be both.
You can really see the two sides of the coin here. On one hand, when you guide students to use AI as a sparring partner, to question it, to critique it, it can actually boost their reasoning. It frees them up from the grunt work to focus on bigger, more complex ideas. But on the other hand, if you just rely on it without thinking, you get what researchers call cognitive offloading. It's a fancy term for letting the AI do the heavy lifting for you, and that can really weaken those problem-solving muscles and even hurt comprehension.
Okay, so that's the debate. But let's move past the what ifs and get into the what is. What are students actually doing with these tools every day? Well, to find out, we're diving into a really groundbreaking study from OpenAI and the National Bureau of Economic Research. They analyzed over 1 million conversations to see what's really going on. And honestly, the findings might surprise you. The number one use case? Practical guidance. We're talking how-to advice, study strategies. That's almost a third of all conversations. Right behind that is writing assistance, and then about 10% is for direct tutoring and teaching. So what does that tell us? It tells us the top uses are really about learning support, not just cheating to get an assignment done.
And you know what else is fascinating? Who is using these tools? Early on, it was mostly guys, but that have completely flipped. As of 2025, that gap is gone. In fact, women now make up a slight majority of users. So that whole idea of a digital divide, it seems like AI in education is becoming a genuinely inclusive resource for everyone. This gets even clearer when you zoom in on writing tasks. The big fear, right, is that students are just typing, "write my essay for me." But the data? It shows the complete opposite. A full 2/3 of the time, students are asking the AI to help them improve and edit work they've already written. They're not using it as a ghostwriter. They're using it as a writing coach.
And that brings us to what might be the single most important insight from all this data. The researchers basically sorted every single interaction into two big buckets. Was the student asking for information to help them learn, or were they doing a task just to get it completed? And the results couldn't be clearer. Asking, seeking out information, trying to get guidance to make better decisions, that was the dominant behavior. It made up almost half of everything. That's way more than doing, which is stuff like drafting an email or writing a piece of code. It shows students are primarily using AI to understand something better, not just to check a box.
So when you put it all together, what does it really mean? It means that whole narrative about students just using AI as a mindless homework machine, it just doesn't hold up. The data shows the vast majority are actually treating it like an educational advisor, a partner in their own learning process. Okay, so let's bring this all back home. What does all this data tell us about our original question, about critical thinking? If students are asking more than they're doing, how does that actually shape their skills? Well, it all seems to come down to your perspective.
The educator and researcher Naomi Latini-Wolf puts this perfectly. She says, AI itself is not inherently harmful or beneficial. It's a mirror. Think about that. It just reflects the intention and the curiosity of the person using it. It can show you a shortcut, sure, or it can reflect a really deep, thoughtful line of questioning. The outcome is totally up to you. So how do we make sure we're using it as a catalyst for thinking, not a crutch? Well, the research points to 4 key things. 1. Actively question the AI's assumptions. Don't just take what it says. 2. Use it to generate examples, both good and bad, and then critique them yourself. 3. Always verify its answers with sources you trust. And 4.
Use the time it saves you to focus on the really important stuff, like analysis and creative problem solving.
And that really brings us to the final takeaway here. The data shows us what's happening on the ground, and the research shows us what's possible. But at the end of the day, the power to decide how this all plays out, well, that lies with every single student and educator out there.
So, we're going to leave you with the very same question that Naomi Latini-Wolf poses in her research. Will you use AI as a simple shortcut to get an answer? Or will you use it as a catalyst to spark a much deeper level of understanding? The choice is yours. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer. If you want to go deeper on this, and I mean really get into the nitty-gritty of AI and critical thinking, you should absolutely follow the work of Naomi Latini-Wolf. You can find her at naomilatiniwolf.com.